team, and Nuss is going to be a strong player. His threes has gone down by his tracker, but his ones has been gone up. He's been grinding his ones rank apparently, and I think he said he was something like GC3 right now in ones, which for a AA player, it's pretty
high,
good.
Yeah.
3. Jesus, I've been stuck in like GC1 for about 17 years
Oh
at this
my
point.
God,
It's awful.
See, the moment you said that he peaked 18 and then went back down to 15, dude, I felt a soul connection, me and him, okay? He's like my brother, dude, because I play, I peaked 18 too, okay? So, and I saw you on stream last time. You had to make fun of me, but listen, I did, okay? I swear, I'm not crazy. But I swear to God, nowadays, I feel like I'm playing like my hands are broken. Like in Deadpool, where he breaks both his hands hitting Colossus, if you guys have seen that movie, and he's just sort of doing this. That's me playing Rocket League now. So, that's my skill cap. So, just so everybody is aware, the rosters we're talking about, just to give them their due: Barracuda, Hoops the Third, Dragon, DZ Balls, what a name, True Sunny D, and Nuss. And then, of course, for the links, we have Tyrant Baguette, what a name, Tobu and Kylo. And really the only name you need off the Mustangs roster is Squintle, because as you heard here, he is their hard carry. He is their rock. He brings the knapsack every game. So I think that's the thing about links. I know links. I've seen them around hyping themselves up. And again, I'm not as familiar with the AA scene. But I do think I have seen a sort of prevailing consensus that they are a good team, but maybe a little bit of an overrated team in the sense that like they're good, but they're not going to be just easily number one. They're not going to be the Samurai of last season from Mav and things like that. So, it's going to be interesting to see. And again, we are now officially into regular season. So, right now we're sort of giving like, okay, we don't have any stats, but we assume things like that. We will have stats for you guys and have a little bit more knowledge where even if we don't know the team, we can be like, okay, they won every game forever, so they must be great. So we are in regular season. It's not too late for everybody listening that is not in RLPC to go ahead and join. However, I don't think you can get fully officially signed this season now. I'm not 100% on that. I've never been a GM.
You can join.
Waitlisted.
Okay. So you can join and be waitlisted and get ready for the next season and things like that. So definitely highly suggest you come check us out as always. But anyways, so moving on from that, unless we have any other topics or anything else anybody wanted to say. Moving on from that, his next take was, so sort of the same thing. He goes, maybe a hot take to you guys, but scrimming links a few times, they aren't as good as what they have been put out to be. So we already sort of discussed this. Squintle said the same thing, scrimming them, that they're good but not that good. I don't want to put too much shade on the links, as I've never played them myself, and I do think we'll see how good they are going into regular season.
Yeah, all over our guests. A guest, we got the GM on here pooping all over his team to start it off.
It hurts.
Hey,
Incredible scenes.
We'll see. We got our first two games. First two games this week. We'll see.
Mike,
I
just wanted to ask, do you have an idea of how the Lynx actually did in preseason? Do you know how they went?
I don't, because I became GM yesterday. So I haven't.
Well, that's good. That's
a
good.
huge thing. I think we'll go into that later on about some GM changes. But I don't know entirely how well they did game to game. Squintle said that they played against them, I believe. Same with Moss preseason's hard to judge from because there's really, if people try or not, especially with major levels as well, a lot of players just don't put in as much effort in the preseason or scrims. So when it really matters is when season or game one of the season and how they can either battle back from a rough preseason or maybe just show out that hey, we just took it easy in preseason, we didn't want people to see our true power.
All right, so I forgot my point now. Good Lord, I was lost in the sauce listening to that. So we're gonna get to see them and see if they perform this season. They will be one of those teams, I think that is one of the nice things. We're obviously not ragging on the Lynx specifically too hard. I think just by the fact that we're talking about you and your name, we'll be watching you throughout the season and see how you guys perform. So definitely the best of luck to you as all teams. So send your angry letters if you are on the Lynx roster and you don't like what we have said here today to @Moss. Okay, don't send it to us. Okay, it's not our fault.
Danger.
Yeah.
At Danger in Gen Chat.
Because we can't
watch
get
out,
anything
bro.
past Danger. He specifically makes sure
If you
we
throw
say
shade at
everything.
Danger, I'm gonna sub him up for my AA team. He's better wipe you all.
Listen,
He's ready.
He may ban you for adding him, but it's in a good cause. Okay, so no, we love Danger. He's great. All right, so The next take, all right, he goes, what else? That's a hot take. I don't know what to go with that take. So, final take he sort of had for us is the Warriors roster are solid but inconsistent. What do you guys think about that?
So yeah, the Warriors, we played them in preseason too. I believe they actually beat us in game 5, and obviously it was kind of preseason's always like, well, this and that because you're obviously swapping players, not having consistent teams the whole way through your 5 games. So I mean, obviously that could play in a factor, but yeah, I mean they were a pretty solid team. They're definitely a very how do I explain? Like a bump chasey type team. So they have a couple players here and there who are pretty good at the demo meta, and then they have a player who's also quick up in the air and can get to the balls fast and chase around a little bit. And the one thing that really surprised me about their team is that Sins is a sub. And Sins was, I believe, the captain of the AA team last season for the Warriors, which was, yeah, and he still is. And last season's AA was considerably better than this season's AA. So it makes you wonder, this veteran AA player who is captain of his team, arguably the best on his team, is now a sub in a lower league. So obviously maybe that ties into some things. Maybe he's really busy, but that's just one thing I was surprised about.
It's super interesting with the Warriors too. When I look at that roster, it's it's a little bit of an arbitrary little fact to point out, but if you take a look at all the RLPC MMR, I know the tracker MMR has them one player at hitting that 1,500 threshold, but they're actually the only team in a AA division where, according to the incentives and this and that not a single player on that team touches the 1,500 MMR threshold, which is interesting because, like you did already mention, that they are that a little bit of a bump heavy kind of team, stuff like that. That is such a huge part of the meta of the game today. As we've seen, even from the pro gameplay over the last years, you don't see as much kind of finesse, kind of plays, the tricky plays, stuff like that. A lot of the meta is now moving towards that kind of bump heavy stuff, and and with a team like this, I'm not saying, of course, that they're not skilled or stuff like that, but I mean, a little bit of the lower MMR players, they've kind of now with the game have grown into being able to play that type of style of game, and it's going to be super interesting to see how a lot of the AA teams are going to respond if you do have that one team that is going to be playing that nice bump heavy meta, and they can catch a couple teams off guard here, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I just real quick before we continue, because I'm failing my duties as a desk host here, the Warriors roster, just so everybody is aware, is Beer Bear, Nasty, Boss, and Sin. So for everybody listening, that's who we're talking about when we say their roster looks interesting. Once again, that's Beer Bear, Nasty, Boss, and Sins. And they actually, you describing the demo meta reminds me of the Osprey. We saw this on stream. It was actually because, listen, dude, I'm 5 head on stream. I don't know if you guys saw that, but literally everything I said, it was like I was writing down the 10 Commandments. It just happened. Okay, I just want to toot my own horn here because nobody else seemed to, but it was amazing. So Osprey, that same sort of thing where they can transition into a heavy demo style, and we saw it work. We saw it work even at a AAA level. So definitely interesting, something to look at with this team going forward, because I do think that's a style that a lot of players don't know how to play against, and what it does, it just makes them mad because they get frustrated because they don't know how do I beat this? Like, these kids aren't good, they just bump me, like that sort of mentality sort of thing. So that will be interesting to see with them too. I don't know what you guys think about it, but it's just like that's going to be, if they win a lot, I would say we attribute a lot of it to that, maybe.
Yeah, I've honestly started trying to adapt a nice little bumps into my game. I do play a little bit of a higher level, but I mean, it's just as relevant. Going all the way from the top of the ranks, as you see, like I did mention, it's very prevalent in league play now, RLCS, and going all the way down, through your GC3, 2, 1, champ, diamond. It's become such a big part of the game, and like you did say, they're really, in my opinion, I mean, I really don't see like a super clear way to like counter a game like that. I mean, if all three of those players are rotating well and they're getting in the goalie's face or getting their bumps in, I mean, unless you're bumping them right back, it's super frustrating to play against, and I do agree with that. Like, if you're all game just getting bumped here left and right, demo, it is super frustrating, and, I have played against a team like that, and it is very hard to counter, so it's going to be super interesting if the Warriors can play that style of game to see where they kind of, end up throughout the season here.
Yeah, and one thing I worry about with that bump heavy game is just when they get too over aggressive and they just throw themselves way too far deep in that offensive zone, and then they don't pick up the bump or the demo or anything like that. And the team just gets a long clear and it goes straight into your own net. So like at that level, you really have to make sure that that third man is solid back and you can trust him not to push up too far. Because otherwise, if you don't pick up that bump or demo, then good luck. It's going to be pretty tough saving that long clear.
We have seen a lot of whiffs, I feel like, on stream, even to start in preseason this week, or this year, excuse me, this week, even this week too. I have consistently on stream, because I make a bunch of bad puns. Thank you, Quantum, for raising me right. I talk about how the ball, honestly, you might have heard me say it, looks like it's coated in a Paula Deen amount of size to butter. Like, oh my God, I couldn't say that. Holy hell. I don't know what I just said. Let me say that again. A Paula Deen amount of butter. Just players that just either glance off of it, don't hit it right, whiff it left, right, and center. And we try not to point that out as much on cast. We want to be fair and kind to all players, but you have noticed that. So that sort of demo, like you're saying, you need to be solid. You need to be solid enough in the backfield that you can hit those balls forward. And if you're whiffing or things like that, now obviously I'm not saying the Warriors whiff everything. That's not what I'm saying at all. We have noticed that from a lot of teams. So you do want to make sure that you can consistently hit the ball so that you have that reliability in the back end, that you can feel free to go chase those demos way on the upfield and get the passing plays going, which is sort of interesting. We've seen either really good or really bad transition play this season, and I think that's another part of such a style, right? Where you throw somebody upfield, and this is what you saw. I think really worked for the Osprey again, which was a demo came out upfield, and they could hit you the ball upfield, so you could play with it, and it's a 2v3, 2v1 situation, things like that. So I'm hoping that the Warriors maybe take a lesson there and do that same thing. But it will be interesting to see, and again, you got our main man Moss looking out for you guys. So. With that said, I think we're gonna move on from AA for now. Like I said, if you guys want to see a full episode on any or all, if we do one, we'll do them all of the different leagues in RLPC. Make sure to let us know in that feedback form so that we have that covered. I know that we're probably going to get a little bit of angry letters now of why didn't you do AAA or major, things like that. So definitely hit us up, but also tell us something like you believe from AA, if you want to see AA covered, and we will talk about it on the podcast, because you guys that are in it are our best resource for information.
Give us some hot takes, please.
Yes, please. Okay, we want to get the spice on stream so that we get yelled at. Okay, we want management to come to us and say, you maybe shouldn't have said that, and then I would be like, okay, but we're rebels.
Okay, rebels against the government.
Exactly. If you see us disappear and have to write apology letters, you know why. So. Moving on, we are going to cover Mav and Indy, the main part of today's episode. So, Mav and Indy, we're going to go here and we're going to be relying on our main man, Raid. I know we haven't necessarily incorporated you as much. This is your moment. This is your time. Your 15 minutes of fame, as it were. So,
time to shine.
So we don't have anything concrete today. So I want you to just start us off. Give us some spice, all right? Give us some knowledge. Hit us with what you know. We're going to start with Mav today. What's going on in the Mav scene, and we will go from there. What do you think, Red?
Well, in Mav, I've been watching my team a lot. Like, I've made sure to try to sit in on as many scrims as I possibly can in as many preseason games for that team as possible. And I know a lot of the guys because a good amount of Mav is the lower end of the players that were in Paladin last season. So it's really nice to be able to see and track those players. Talking about some teams that I think are going to be really, really successful for Mav, I think the captains are by far currently what I believe is the strongest Mav team. The striker, he went by V2 Black Magic last season. He is a really solid player, and I think he could hold an Indy, and he ended up as high Mav, which is really good. Alfie, a bit of a polarizing figure. He's got his attitude can be called into question, but as a player, as a mechanical Rocket League player on the pitch, he's really good. And as long as he can fit in the rotation, he's really good there. And their third Legend MC is also a really solid. He's a very defensive player, and he looked really good in Paladin last season. So they're a team that I think has all the tools to be very successful in Mav this season. Continuing on, the next team that looks absolutely terrifying is the Macaws. And Dedan, and starting with the Macaws, Dedan was my teammate for the first part of last season. Very solid player, very mechanical player, a player who I don't think should be Mav, a player I think should have pushed into Indy, and I'm shocked he didn't. Their second is Minaberry, went by Cinnamina
2 seasons back, but played for the first little bit and then for personal reasons had to leave. And she is really, really solid. She was one of the top players in MAV 2 seasons back, and now she's back and a really low MMR for her skill ceiling, which I think is really good. And third, I'd argue, in their third is Froggy, a recent trade acquisition, and from the Pandas. And I'm really shocked that they put Froggy up for trade, because Froggy's probably the most polarizing figure in that whole league. Because last season he was in Indy, he was a 1500. He didn't play very much. He dropped his rank down to 1100, which people are worried that that'll be a Smurf or that will be a player that doesn't belong in that league. But we won't really know till we get to the season.
Samurai Part 2, as it were. Samurai Part 2.
I'm honestly, it's going to be interesting to see. And that's just a team where like Dadan is a player I think should be Indy. Mina's a player I think should be Indy. Froggy's a player I think should be Indy. And they're all on a team together. So it's not just one strong player.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You can go. Okay, I was going to say, I personally don't know a lot about Mav or Indy, but there are a few names I recognize. And to me, if I recognize the name, that probably means two things. Either the player is really good for their skill level and people are talking about them, or we shift to the opposite side of the spectrum and they're kind of a player who gets made fun of a little bit because maybe they shouldn't be there. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying any of these players are that player, but I'm saying I do recognize a lot of those names on the Macaw, especially Dadan. I'm pretty close with one of a Paladin from last season, Hakuna, and he says that Dadan was one of the strongest players in Paladin last season.
Yeah, he was an all-star.
Yeah, and
he was an all-star level player in Paladin last season, and now he's in a league even lower than that. So expect for him to be absolutely terrifying, honestly.
Yeah.
Let's moving on. I'm gonna try to keep an unbiased take on my team, but one player in particular that we recently acquired, Dr. Hitshot, is freaking nuts. He was on the Camels, but the Camels couldn't handle him on the team because he took it very seriously, and he's a really he's a good player, and by that he knows he's good to the point where he can come off as a little cocky, but he is a really skilled player that I'm looking at. He's my team or not. Even when I saw him on the Camels, I knew he was going to be a really good player for the league.
So
go ahead.
I just was gonna go ahead and continue. I just want to make sure, that we were talking about these teams. I'm going to go ahead and preface this, and we will get to whether you think these are good rankings or not. But I want to give everybody so last week we gave you all the top 3 teams from every league. And so we have gotten the official word from the news team from, I believe, just Arco, as he was the only one to have them. And so his top 3 teams are the Samurai at number 1, followed by the Hornets, followed by the Captains. So as we discuss these things, keep that in mind. And then I'm going to ask you a little bit, Raid, you're talking about the Macaws and things like that. If you think those are accurate, if you think maybe they're just super biased because of last season, etc. But continue what you were saying, and we will feed off of that afterwards.
Absolutely. And then moving on, there's the Pandas also look a little I'm not sure whether they're going to be really good or not. But just the very idea that they have 2 Renegade players in Helpful Fool and Sure Havoc on a Maverick roster in low champ, high diamond, I'm expecting that team to be really good. But there's also the chance that they don't end up working out because they were the team that shipped off Froggy because that wasn't working. So I'm wondering if Froggy leaving will fix the issues that team was having or whether there's bigger issues there, but we'll have to see when we get into the season. Continuing down the list, the Piranhas are another polarizing team because Cooper 5K, I have not seen play. I've heard he's really good. I've also heard he's quite toxic. So it's kind of an interesting situation because I don't really know the guy, but I've heard stories about him being previously suspended and that he's previously been in higher leagues and is known for being a pretty solid player. And Trot sees enough in him to pick him up for his Mav roster, so I think he's going to be good. And I've also had a chance to play with their other top player on that team, River Risks, and I think he is one of the most well-rounded Mav players. When I play with him, he's no different than any of the indie guys I play with. He's super consistent. Talking about like the team that's ranked number 1 in power rankings, we're going to talk about Samurai. And Samurai, I think the big thing with the Samurai is there's not really a superstar. They're all consistent players. Kevin, Styx, Giraffe, and Chromatoad. They're all like, from seeing them scrim my team, no player pops off, but they all play their roles and they're all very consistent. When you play that team, it's like they're the same team each time, and there doesn't seem to be any variance from game to game, which will help them during the season.
Are they the same Samurai roster that went 17-1 last season? I can't quite remember if those are. I don't think so, right?
No, none of the players on that team are from that. They're all like, this is all players from, like, I don't think anyone stuck around from that org.
Makes sense. I mean, if you go 17-1, you're probably going to head and boost up a little bit to a.
I actually think most of their guys either left or went to Indy or higher into P4. Okay. I think that's pretty much a brand new roster.
That'd be I'm curious to see that then. Like
the next team, like, and there's a team that's highly underrated in my opinion. One of the last ones I'm going to talk about for Mav is the Solar, because it's Capital, Standard Stevie, our Stevie now technically, and Arco. And in my opinion, that is a terrifying team. Because if you've been around the block in the league, you'd know Arco is a really solid player. And he's been in higher leagues before, and to see him down, like MMR on the sheets as 1140, you must think like, holy cow, that's going to be an interesting situation. And then on the contrary, Capital, he was one of the top players in Paladin last season. Wasn't all-star, but he was by far the best player on his roster. So it'll be interesting to see.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
So I just want to bring everybody back in here. I know you have a lot more to say, and we will continue to give it
Absolutely.
here. But I want to give us a little break here so everybody can. Obviously, this is a very comprehensive review. Your knowledge astounds me of Mav here, because I think our viewers, especially you guys, they care about Mav, are going to love this.
Double thumbs up.
Talking about everybody. So I just want to bring everybody in here for a little bit of discussion. So we've talked about a lot of things.
Of course.
So. To sort of sum this up easily for us right now, and then obviously you can finish what we were discussing here. But so the top 3 teams again, for everybody listening, that were given to us from basically Arco were Samurai, followed by Hornets, followed by Captains. Do you think that's accurate? Because we discussed, you talked about how the Samurai, they're sort of the same team all the time, and it's none of the same returning players that made that roster great last season, things like that. We'll just start with the Samurai. Do you think they belong there at that number 1 position?
Not at all. I think the Samurai are a decent middle-of-the-pack team, but I do not think they're a team that could be the top of that league. And I think when they're surrounded by opponents like the Captains, the Macaws, the Pandas, the Piranhas, the Solar, those are all teams that I believe have higher potential than the Samurai. So I'm kind of perplexed by the decision to put the Samurai up at the top of the power rankings.
17-1.
Yeah, I mean it's got to be. That's
last season, but they're a very different roster.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably got something to do like news team. They have a lot of work to do, so they probably just were like, they seemed good last season. I don't know much about Map. Let's slap them in there. That being said, obviously, like I said, I believe we got these from Arca, and you were talking about he's on another team and things. So I actually am surprised that he slapped them up there so high. I mean, he put his own Solar org all the way down on the 9th place. So I guess he maybe has faith in his boys, but not that much faith.
It seems kind of slapped up without much thought. I'm going to be honest. There
Yeah.
are orgs that where if you took a second and put some thought into like who's going to be strong in Mav, you could easily see that like these takes are this take of like the rankings is a little all over the place, and it seems like there wasn't a lot of knowledge when they were putting them up.
Yeah.
As someone who knows a lot about these leagues, there's some really confusing orders.
And that all could be chalked down to not having either preseason rankings or maybe Arco not being able to see everything at the same time. Because I know a lot of the people in the Power Rankings news server on the Power Rankings teams are P4 players. I believe there's only around 2 or 3 people who are actually in Indian Mav, and then all 3 of those people are in Indy besides Arco, who's Mav. And yeah, so I mean, some people, well, obviously all of them didn't do power rankings except for Arco, so the average is going to be Arco's And not to mention, we didn't get any of our preseason results back for the Mav and Indie leagues. So that all ties into how these preseason rankings look.
Absolutely.
I think it's one of those things that something I'd like to see from I know that not Squintle, good lord, I'm looking at Squintle. Sorry, boys, my mind's everywhere. Skirky, who has rebranded himself, I believe, was asking for like people to report their preseason and how hard they thought the matches were. I thought that was a really good idea, but I think that RLPC in the future, what I'd like to see is that they make that official. So they make that captains have to fill that form out, right? And the reason I say that is because, yes, preseason is more like organized scrims. But I do think for like people like us, people like News Team, people, casters, things like that, it would just be nice to be like, okay, none of this matters, but this team shot accuracy is amazing, or things like that, like to give us some sort of look, so that preseason means, I think it would mean a little bit more to the players. Even they would try, I think, a little harder in these than just being like, I'll try if I'm on stream because I'm on stream, but like otherwise it's preseason, who really cares? Like that mentality. I just would like to see that being something that they make happen going forward. Obviously, that might be easier if we get a website up, things like that. But thinking like United Rogue, RFC, but
yeah,
and I just want to say, look, I'm not gonna rant, okay? I'm not gonna complain, all right? There's a lot of good people that try to do a lot of great things for this league. We cannot put out good media and good posts if you don't tell us what is going on. There is only such a select few people on media team, on news team. Without your help, we can't be everywhere at once. And so, like, we really would like to try to encourage captains and GMs to, like, hey, like, get your boys engaged, because, like, there are people that are maybe on a wait list or haven't been really noticed or something that would love to be playing, that would put in that effort, put in that work, allow the media team to produce the content that you all want to see. But if you guys aren't filling out, the report forms or the preseason forms, it just makes our lives so much harder, because there's only so much that we can understand and see what's going on. We're not going from lobby to lobby, spectating each game. There is 4 leagues, 2 independent leagues, and that is a lot of stuff going on. So please, help us out a little bit, please.
And going back to what Dead Medic said about people not trying, I mean, with preseason, you're not punished if you don't, like, people don't even show up to their preseason games sometimes. Because, like, let's be honest, preseason right now is a bunch of scheduled scrims that RLPC has put together. And they're like, oh, yeah, you play you. But it's like, you don't even have to if you don't want to. And, I mean, this can be proven. Maybe it's not all orgs, but my major captain, I'm friends with him, and that's why he is my captain. He's like, do you and an A player just want to play our game for us? Because we don't want to play. And it's like, obviously us getting beaten isn't going to be accurate results for how well my major team's going to be doing in the season for these preseason rankings. So obviously this could be said from the management standpoint, or all the way back down to just the players, but something does have to be done about the preseason being a little bit more accurate for some things, maybe making it a little bit more mandatory, something along those lines. But
maybe a preseason tourney, just like Stites ran for some
like major, yeah.
I mean, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Drop the egos, everybody.
Drop the egos.
I agree. The preseason tourney, I think we all agreed was a good idea. Now we had seen this, and I want to dance around this because I don't want to cause any drama that's been resolved. We saw this play out in several Discord chats where it just didn't work out. We had a disconnect between media team and the guys running the tournament, in particular because they just wanted to run it for a single league. We don't do that here at RLPC, like we try to make sure that every league can get involved in things like that. And we felt that it would be unfair if you had a tournament just for, in this case, it would have been AAA than for everything else. I completely understand the idea of wanting to get this tournament down, and I fully supported it. I do think it maybe could have, the planning, I think maybe you needed more of a team, and I believe it was mostly a single individual trying to throw all this together in a hurry. So I definitely liked the idea of a preseason tournament, but I actually floated this same idea out there a little bit, which was like, like, I thought it would be interesting if to keep people engaged in the season. And I want to throw this out here because it's something we had discussed, but I think that maybe I would like to see, people give more of a yes or no to it. I know I'm sure I'm going to get a ping of like, discuss media team suggestions and media team. Don't put them out there. But I thought it would be sort of interesting if we did an RLCS style, like, how they have like winter major and things like that, which don't affect like regular season, but you can actually win points if you're like first, second, third in such a tournament. I thought that would be really interesting if, as you go through the season, you had a couple like tournaments to encourage participation there from the community or from abroad. And it would be like, if you won, maybe you got a single point, like it would be like you got another win or something like that to throw you any closer to playoffs or things like that. I thought that would be really interesting, like as an idea. I don't know how well it'd be easy to implement, obviously. But I thought something like that, mentioning just that tournament thing, like that would be, I think, really cool, because it would give teams that are like, man, I am only 2 games behind my division rivals, and it was only because we had a 2 bad series, and there's no way I'm going to catch up if they keep winning. Gives them some hope, gives them some life, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what you guys think about it. It was an idea I thought about, and now obviously it's going to be really hard to implement, but something, just talk about tournaments. You could even do something similar for preseason and have it just not count.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, this isn't me saying, oh yeah, let's copy United Rogue, which is one of our rival leagues. But they have something like that where they have a middle of the season tournament for all teams. They're automatically entered, and seeding works. It's kind of weird. Seeding's like how your team did last season, which is obviously weird because obviously you pick up new players. But they still have a mid-season tournament that actually counts for something if you win. Like me, I could go get it real quick, but I'm not gonna. But my team won one of the UR mid-season tournaments, and our team, like, we were a solid team, but we had a few unfortunate series here and there, and we didn't make playoffs. But we won that middle of the season tournament, and we ended up getting a cash prize, and we all got a jersey from UR for free. So something like that might be a little bit of incentive for players in RLPC to have more will to play, I guess you could say, and will to try harder even if their team isn't doing so well in this regular season.
And as Cyan had mentioned, we are always looking for you guys, the community, to get more involved, just because it helps us tremendously knowing what you guys want. Like a big thing, and you could even respond to the feedback form for this podcast or something. We are looking for ideas to get you guys involved. If maybe you're not on a team, if you are waitlisted, things like that, or you're just in the wider community and we want to get you involved in RLPC in some way, and you're just looking for people to vibe with, but you maybe missed the deadline to get on a team and you're still looking to maybe play in a team setting and meet people. If you guys have ideas, free agent tournaments, things like that, things that you think maybe we could implement, please send it to us. We would love to try in some capacity to get you guys involved. We are always looking to get more people involved. Now, obviously, the efficacy of such things we would have to discuss because we are a big league. We got a lot going on. We've done a ton of reformatting this season, if you guys have noticed, from graphics to this podcast. So please send us what you guys think would help to make it easier for us to get you guys involved, whether you're on a team, whether you're in FA, whether you're just in general and you don't even, you're on the fence about joining the league and you want to see how it would feel. Please send us what you guys think you would want to do. But I don't want to get too far from Mav and Indy. So, we talked about Samurai probably don't belong there. What do you think, Raid, about obviously the number 2 and 3 ranked teams in the two being Hornets and the third being Captains?
I know almost nothing about the Hornets, if I'm going to be honest. They haven't played my team yet, and there's only a single name that I recognize on the Hornets, and that's being Chuck. Trailblazer I've heard, but I haven't really seen play, and I don't recognize the name Silent Wolf or 14 at all. So, I really can't say anything because there's no statistics down, and they haven't played my team, so it's kind of hard for me to do a take on them.
Honest man, love it.
Yeah, don't put out the spice unless you know it. All right, so I don't want to rush us here, and obviously you have a ton more to say about Mav, and hopefully, I really hope we can get you back on here to talk more about maybe even Mav individually, if that is something everybody wants to see. But we are already hitting the 40-minute mark, and we have a whole other league in Indy and other stuff to talk about. So I do want to move on to Indy. I'm going to go ahead and drop for everybody. The top 3 teams, again, Arca's picks for Indy, are Thrashers at number 1, Grizzlies at number 2, Scorpions at number 3. That being said, give us your take so far of Indy, what you think, what you know, what you want to see going forward, and then we'll get, like we just did, back into the meat and potatoes of the top 3 here.
Well, I'll talk team by team. Like, I'll start, like, I'm going to try to format this where I'm going to first talk about teams I think are really strong in Indy, and then I'm going to go into some of the drama, some of the situations, some of the moves that particular teams have made, because there's a good few that have made some substantial changes and some drama that would be really interesting.
We love that spice out here, boys. We love it.
Oh yeah, of course. So starting from the top, my team played the Admirals. They're a very solid team. Flint's MMR on the sheets is 1340, but he fell from GC because he was an indie player last season, so it's really interesting to see. And they're just a very consistent team from what I saw. The Centurions, the Centurions are another team I think are going to be really strong simply off of chemistry, because Whiffing Pro and Buntum play really, really well together, and their third in Chalky Milkshake is a really, really strong mechanical player from what I saw. The Dragons are probably my favorite for all of Indy, simply off of the fact that of their starter and their captain and their GM in Nsekenga, because as someone who's been around in this league for a couple seasons now, Kenga won Indy and was MVP 2 seasons back, and Indy 2 seasons back was a C2 league, so even seeing him back down here is really terrifying in terms of, like, because I know he's a really skilled player, and his teammate Dots also fell from Indy. I know very little about him, but the fact that there's 2 people who fell from being in a league for a low GC to a league that's C1 to C2 is going to be really interesting, and I expect this team to be pretty dominant. Otherwise, it would be pretty disappointing. The next team that I think looks really strong is the Grizzlies, mostly because I know Entity, Boku, and Pixel. Entity is a super consistent player. He's worked his mechanics really hard, and he's gone up in rank really quickly. Boku's a really consistent player. He was really good in Renegade last season. And Pixel, their sub, was arguably the most mechanical player in all of Paladin last season. So they're a really strong team. Their only X factor is West 10, who was the player they tried out and signed, because I don't know very much about him. Moving on, the Scorpions are another team for me that is very much a team that it has really high expectations, that it's going to be so disappointing if they're not met, because they've been hyping themselves up in indie chat saying they're the best team. Bengi in particular was causing some spice with his talks about how day whatever of having the best team in indie, and then Smurf started going in and saying day something of proving it through winning preseason games, and like they're hyping themselves up and making characters of themselves, which I think is going to be really good for rivalries during the season and going to be really entertaining to see. And the next team is the Sockeyes, and I think they're 100% going to be a top team, because I know for a fact that there's a lot of chemistry there between Swanee and Cooper, having played together for years. And then with Sinful and Porter as the other two, there's a lot of built-in chemistry with that team, and it'll be really interesting to see how they play this season. And moving on, the last team that I think is pretty strong is the Yellow Jackets, because we all know Vortex, and he's a really solid player. He was Renegade last season, and he's been proven to be a very consistent player season after season. And the Yellow Jackets made major moves to keep him and drop the rest of their roster in order to make that happen. So it'll be really interesting to see what they can do. So now I want to go into more of the drama, because that I think is the more entertaining part of indie, because there's a lot of really interesting situations. And the first one, if you've been paying any attention in indie chat and in Gen chat, the Cyclones have had a ton of drama. Their one player, JSN, rage quit after there was some controversy after a game versus the Dragons. The Dragons were annoyed because the Cyclones took 30 extra minutes to join the game, and they were constantly leaving and joining during the game, which was causing lag for the players on the Dragons. And after the game, the Dragons were annoyed and brought this up. There was an argument. JSN got annoyed and left the server completely. And since then, their GM Arkans had bad interactions with other players, and their roster's been almost completely changed. They have 2 new players in Excaligo and CR Hades, and they're hoping to be able to put this drama behind them and make a strong team moving forward. But in their scrim against us, they didn't really put a good effort, so I'm unsure whether they'll be able to turn around from this drama.
I mean, it's kind of it's kind of hard to throw together a team with probably like, what was it, like halfway through the preseason, maybe something like that.
Not even.
Yeah.
Like this all happened like a couple, like I think like 3-4 days ago, and they basically scrapped 2 players. One player left, one player was kicked, and they picked up 2 new players.
Reasonable.
And now they've just got to roll with this roster. And there were issues with drama, but they picked up Hades. And if anyone remembers Hades, a couple seasons back, the issue with Hades was he has a bit of like he's a really big influencer through Instagram, and he's got some attitude to him where he like thinks he's super strong. And like that caused issues with his previous team in the sense that there were some issues between him, Xavi, Standard Stevie a couple seasons back. So it'll be interesting to see if he's reformed and can keep a good profile with his GM and with his teammates for this season. I wish him the best.
Listen, he might be strong, but only one person I've ever seen on a podcast with a Wawa shirt and a Supreme thermostat his size, bro. I don't know if he's got
it's
anything
a
on
NASA hoodie
his side.
today, bro. I'm on my Supreme. You like my bottle? I'm a hype piece, bro. I got money to blow.
Dripping.
But
Right.
I could see waiting 30 minutes, like you have something going on in real life, but that joining and leaving to me, that I'd get mad about that too. That I don't know what was going on there. Maybe there was something behind the scenes, but that's just not becoming behavior. Like forfeit at that point, it's just preseason or get a sub or something. Whatever was happening, I don't know.
Yeah, it was. I don't know a lot of details because all I'm hearing is like the sides and what was talked about through Discord and what I've heard from other people. But it was a really interesting situation overall. The next major drama is the defending champions of Paladin in the Rhinos org. That Rhinos team had 2/3 of that winning team from last season, but they didn't win a game in all of preseason. So it was Wonka and Aiden from the roster last season, plus AR coming over and Cubics as the sub. That was their roster. And they didn't win a single preseason game, and they were losing, and they didn't have confidence, and there were issues. So their GM Clamps decided to change things up by dropping both AR and Cubics and picking up Shark Hacks. And it'll be really interesting to see if that fixes this roster, because to see a team as that successful last season having this much trouble this season, it's kind of interesting and something that maybe they'll be able to rebound from, but maybe they won't.
See, can I just want to comment on that, and it's like, situations like that, kind of like we kind of mentioned, about 10, 20 minutes ago at this point, where, the preseason really isn't the greatest judge, of kind of skill. Maybe this team hasn't really been playing together, over the last couple of weeks. They took a little bit of a break after the season. You never know what the circumstances are. But, such a rash decision just coming from based on preseason results to, deciding to completely split up a team that was, a champion in one of the RLPC leagues last season, that in my opinion is just a tad rash, a little bit of a rash decision. In my opinion, I would just let the boys kind of play it out at least, for a couple of weeks before you start making decisions like that. Because at this point now, you split up your championship roster, and just because of preseason results, and now you're going in completely fresh, and now you really don't know if this team can be a winner. The team you had can be a winner because they are winners, but now you just basically bring your entire kind of position into just the unknown a little bit, and that just doesn't sit right to me.
As someone in this league going up from that Paladin league that team won in, it's a bit of a jump with like the quality of opponents going from that league to the indie league this season, especially with the people coming down with them not counting season 14. So I think that there's kind of an atmosphere there where like the advantage that Wonka and Aiden had last season, they don't really have anymore with the stronger competition and the improvement by other players in the league. So like they can no longer rely on just being strong individuals, and they need that strong third that they're hoping to get out of Shark Hacks. So it's just like seeing if that'll work, because it was really obvious that their other roster was not working with the 2 new players.
Yeah, and making that decision now, I think he's just trying to avoid, having something come up later. Yeah, the buyout penalties. They're so difficult. Like,
oh yeah, that's right.
If you buy out a lower ranked player that just barely made your MMR, then you're not gonna be able to pick up a 4th player. So like,
Oh man, I could rant on his
Yeah.
stupid buyout penalties, dude. Oh my, that was like one of the my one big tidbits was when I was a GM was this. Oh, all right, I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, and looking through the sheets, I actually have noticed a ton of teams that only have like 3 players, even in like AAA, things like that. So I wonder what's going on there, but I don't think we have time to discuss that today. Give us 1 or 2 more if you have any, right? And then we do gotta
Of course,
get to
I've got like the last. I've really got one more team with a lot of drama, and that team is the Yellow Jackets, because the Yellow Jackets opened preseason by dropping Shark Hacks in order to keep the roster that was at that point Jonah, Cheeto, Xavi, and Xavi and Stuffy. And then they but they decided to move away with, like, they dropped Xavi, they dropped Shark, they picked up Vortex. Like, they've made massive roster moves, and like, as far as I'm aware, that team's been highly successful regardless of what roster's being run. So I think it was kind of the decision of, like, they had a lot of strong players and they had to pick only 4. But it'll be interesting to see, because if this roster doesn't do well, it will beg the question of, did they pick the right 4? Did the players they drop, were they the right ones to drop, and were the players they kept good enough?
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to see.
And one thing that stands out to me is that Yellow Jackets team, I'm looking, and a lot of these indie teams all have at least 1 or 2 people over the 1,300 mark, and not a single person on the Yellow Jackets team has peaked over 1,300 MR, at least according to our last 2 seasons. So that's one thing that's pretty stands out there, especially considering there's some people in here who are like 1342 and 1347, which is pretty high, like 50, 60 MMR ahead of the top player on the Yellow Jackets, which is, I believe, Jonah. So, yeah.
I try not to be super judgmental of that, simply because, like,
Yeah.
like, people who drop in these last couple of seasons may not necessarily, like, a player who's like 1240 in the last 2 seasons could have dropped from 1400 and still be a really solid player. Like even in Mav, when I was looking in Mav, there were players who were like there were teams with 3 people who were 1100, all 3 of which were 1300. Like, the MMR can be a bit misleading because they're only counting 2 seasons. So like, it's more just trust with the GM and the players and how the players play together than MMR this season more than ever.
And touching on Squindle's point as well, and I've seen this with different GMs, is that, you know, some teams they go for a top level MMR player, but then they have to supplement that with maybe a couple lower MMR players, rather than having like all 4 players all within that same skill level where they all kind of know how each other play because they play with them in ranked all the time. So I mean, it really seems like, you know, what's the winning strategy there? Do you go with 4 guys that all play the same play style almost, where they kind of know how each player play because they play in that same skill level, or do you go with that top level player that, you know, takes up most of your cap space, but then might not be able to play around some lower MMR players because they just don't understand how they play, or, you know, maybe it frustrates them because they just don't know how to play with them?
Depends on if your carry is L's or Slice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it really does depend on who your top MMR player is, because obviously, in my opinion, if you're going to go for that strategy of, I'm going to get this guy, he's top of the league, best MMR, I just got to find these guys to support him. You want that guy to be fast, mechanical, and consistent. Those are the 3 key things you need for that carry, because if they're just like a normal player and they're just like kind of they're at the top MMR, but that's just because they can play with people at that MMR, that's not really going to help you, because I see players like that tend to kind of stoop down to the level they're playing with when they play down there. So maybe like a 1500, he's 1500, he's solid, he's fast and he's consistent. Going down to like 1300, he's going to play like a 1300 because the rest of the lobby is 1300. Where you get a player who's like 1500, but they're mechanical and they just pure mechanics and that's all they do, and that's basically it. They're fast and mechanical. They can use those mechanics at the lower rank where people might not be able to defend it as well. And that's where the difference comes in. If you have that mechanical player, it could work out. But I don't see a player who's just consistent being able to carry a team.
Mm-hmm. You know, and it's one thing I've never understood from a captain perspective is why do you drop so many of your players at once? Like I've been a captain in several leagues, and the way I always approached it was, if you were having a problem with your team, talk to your team. You know, try to get the players individually so they feel more comfortable, maybe talking about how they feel, and just find that what you'll typically find is one sort of player gets a general consensus of like this guy is really sort of throwing us off, that kind of thing, and then you make adjustments. Either you try to go to that player and say, hey, listen, you need to start doing X, Y, and Z, but in so many words, you do it delicately, obviously, or I'm gonna have to bench you, things like that, or I'm gonna replace you, and you fix that problem. We actually had this problem on our Bobcats roster. We just felt we were having issues. We were predicted to be second overall in AAA, and we had lost every preseason game but one. So, but the one we won was because we made a change. We got together as a team and said, hey, listen, this isn't working out. We need something to change. We made the change and it worked. And so I've never understood, let me just drop everybody and hope that everybody else that I get comes together fine and I don't have to make that change again. I always have felt like it's better to work piece by piece until you can build around a player that you're most excited about or that you like the most. So I that being said, I'm sure GMs and captains have their reasons for saying get rid of them all or get rid of two of them or get rid of three of them. Let me just rebuild. But I have always thought it just works out better, and the team, you have better feelings among everybody on the team if you try to go piecemeal, one by one, work with players, and then if it still doesn't work, you can say, look, we tried. I definitely think you're a good player. I would be happy to give you to someone else and give you a rep, but you just don't work right now with what we're trying to do. So I definitely think you get that sort of drama. But that being said, because we are getting close to the hour mark or a little over it, I want to move us on. It was absolutely fantastic coverage, and from you, Raiden. I definitely want to get you back in here to talk more about Mav and Indy as the season rolls on. It might not be next week if we decide to go league by league because we want to get a little more development. And I do want to say this, break the fourth wall here for real quick before we move on. I see all you little Timmies in Twitch chat. You're talking about this drama. You're like, no, that didn't happen, or yes, that happened, or A, it's toxic. We are live, but we're also not live. So this is pre-recorded, something I think a lot of people didn't recognize last time. We do that so that we can give you guys the best quality, get us backgrounds, audio, sounds good, everything. So we definitely feel you. We watch these VODs back, so we see you in chat, and we may even be in chat. I was in chat last time when it premiered, but we cannot respond to you live. So again, as I'm going to preach every million times today, now that I have the power of the moderator desk, feedback form. Give us what you thought. Like, that was a terrible take. No, absolutely not. Well, okay, we'll take that under advisement. Maybe correct it next time, etc. Obviously, if you're one of the players we are talking about, maybe we'll have to take a look at that one. But
hi, Chasen.
Chasen.
Yeah, sure havoc somewhere.
If you guys didn't know, Chasen's a little rule. He has vowed he will not type or be in an RLPC VC or anything related in RLPC until he hits 1800. That's Chasen's words, not mine. He has sworn by this, and he hasn't said a word in RLPC since I believe the 1st of January.
We need an update of where he's at.
Yeah, I know. we need a camera crew following him, and we can make an inspirational basketball movie out of it. Like, he started from down here, and then he went up here, but then he fell and went back. Like have Samuel L. Jackson in there somewhere as a coach, whatever. Okay, so as I said, we try to get the community involved. So this is going to be our community segment. We're going to try to do this every week, as long as you guys give us enough to work with. So, community segment. Here we go. So, the first thing that people wanted to talk about we saw was Rage Burner being dropped from the Falcons. Now, this is single A. Now, I don't know much about him personally. However, I have talked to people. I have talked to my sources. They say he was a super good player, and he just got dropped. I don't know why. Most people didn't know why. They said he was good enough that he should have stayed on this roster. I don't know if you guys have any insight into this. We lost our single A man, unfortunately. But I think that so I'd heard about this. A lot of people were shocked. What do you guys think?
Well, I know
Falcons
that
are not on 18.
Yeah, I know that the GM and AGM are both on that team, so they have very limited room because I think they both want to be playing in. You can't really get rid of an AGM or GM off that AA Falcons team. So they only had 2 real spots to play with. So who knows if those 2 are either their friends or if they played with them in another league or something like that. But yeah, it's I feel like it's tough to try and fit someone in when you really only have 2 spots to play with.
And I have been informed from other sources that my original sources at the CIA were completely wrong. They gave me the wrong intel. I've dropped in the wrong LZ. They are a AA team. This was on
It's
AA.
us. We're the
Not
source.
single A,
We're
yeah. Whoops. Okay, so yeah, I mean, there's always, I think, reasons behind dropping like one of your best, or what people consider to be one of your best players. Like you said, I think the reasons are their own, and we won't know them unless they tell us. It is sort of a curious drop. Although, why can I not find? There they are. I'm trying to find them on the sheets. So, and obviously, like you said, their GM and their AGM's on there. And if they talk, I know T-Man's super involved in his teams. So clearly they knew what they were doing there. We'll have to see if it was a good drop going forward at the Falcons' benefit, I guess. I don't know.
And I can't comment on Rage Burden's skills. I've never seen him play, nor this is my first time hearing about him. No offense to him. I've never heard of him. But it is interesting that they dropped him and they kept 2 EU players, which could tie into a lot of difficulty scheduling. Like, maybe if you had 1 EU player as a sub, it wouldn't be as bad. Maybe there could be a few games where you could find a time slot that would work. But with 2 EU players, where at least one of them has to play every game, it's going to be hard to find consistent time slots that work.
I'll be honest, with every single EU player that I've ever played in the league, they are up until like 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I don't understand how they do it. My main one is Farrell. I played with Farrell for a season. This man was literally an owl. It's insane. I don't understand like how these EU players are coming over and just doing these East Coast times, because it's just, I can't imagine playing Rocket League at 3:30 in the morning. I think my brain would explode. I can't imagine, but they do it, so we'll see.
That's the thing. NA leagues are just simply better, dude. That's why all the EU players want to play in them, even if their time zones are different. And that always is a problem with the EU scheduling. I've played against and with EU players before. Some of them could only play in the dead of midnight. Some of them needed early in the day, so it wasn't midnight for them. So, obviously they know their scheduling best. They've talked to those players. Those players are committed. I have had problems where players have committed to times before in other leagues, and then they just don't. They just don't make that commitment. They're like, yes, I promise you the world. And then you sign them, and they're like, I'm here sometimes, I forgot to tell you. So we'll have to see, honestly, that scheduling might become a thing. And they actually might get kind of caught in the same situation that we were, where we dropped P. Shooter, a player that we liked but just couldn't keep because we had to maintain 4. And then Justin gets suspended. In this case, maybe a player turns out not being able to play. And then you're left in the awkward position of, do you keep the suspended player? Do you go on your hands and knees back to the player you cut to try to get, et cetera, that sort of thing, or what other talent's out there? So we will have to see that going forward. I saw you guys' comments about you wanted to see the worst and best teams in single A. I'm sure that was single A players saying that. That is something we will cover if we cover single A in detail. We are running low on time. I don't think we have time to get into that. Also, our single A guy isn't here as much. So we will get to that. I promise you, we just cannot get to that today. I just wanted to put that out there. Like I said, I want to make sure you guys know we are reading your comments. So moving on, you guys were asking about team trades and news and rankings and predictions. These are all things we talk about at all different points of the podcast. So, but the big thing I wanted to cover today was, it seems we have a GM epidemic at the moment. GMs are dropping like flies all of a sudden. Just for everybody that's unaware, we had Maple just disappear. So he took over for Ritzy, who just vamoosed off of his Tigers team. They actually were a decently looking team that in AAA, and that has hurt them significantly in a lot of people's minds. It will now be up to Typhon to carry that team, So we'll see how that team goes on going forward. So then you had Maple take over, and then Maple just pieced on out of here. I don't even really know what. I know he was having some sort of drama, I believe, with Nuss in one chat, but I didn't follow it. I unfortunately I did not. I failed my duty to bring you guys the most spicy of the spicy takes. I also don't know how much we're allowed to say here, so let me keep that in mind. But so he disappears out of the blue, Maple. A lot of people don't know why. I'm one of them, and so now I believe we're left with Mitch as their GM now?
No, me.
GM? Oh, of you, right? Yes, that's what we were talking
Jesus
about. Listen, okay, I'm all over the place, but now see we have the GM. Maybe he can enlighten us on what happened with your organization. I forget which org you were talking about here for some reason.
Lions.
Yeah, so there we go. Lions org.
There was some disagreements, and Maple ended up leaving. And this is all within 5 days, maybe.
Yesterday.
He
messaged me yesterday.
Yeah, I went from captain to AGM to GM all within 3 days, maybe. And now I'm trying to figure it all out, and we're having some issues with our AAA team and single A team now because, you know, AAA was Ritzy, single A was Maple. He ended up taking up the spot after we bought out Stacked, I believe it was. And now we're limited on cap space in that single A because we're just going to have Maple fill in. Maple's right there.
Maybe we should look at the stupid buyout penalties again.
Yes.
Buyout penalties are rough,
Give me a
man.
break.
Yeah, I can also speak to Maple because I was the one left in charge of the Beavers org because he had both an Indie and a P4 org that he was running. And from my perspective, he didn't say a word in any of our chats. And like even looking at what he said in Gen chat, there wasn't really much. It seemed like he just decided to leave all the servers without really much of a word. And it left me in the role of GM, whereas but unlike Magic Mike, I had been AGM for a while, so I wasn't just thrown in there randomly. Mm-hmm. So like I was like prepared to take over, and like I kind of like, and I know a lot about the league having been there for 3 seasons now, but it was still like just really sudden. Like yesterday, like within an hour, he was just gone and without a trace.
Yeah.
So it's like perplexing to all of us.
Yeah, I got a DM saying, hey, if I end up leaving, would you take over? And then within like 10 minutes, he was gone. It was just like, all right, wow.
Decision is in an executive position. He's just like, you know what? You're doing it either way.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
exactly.
Vamos. You know, I know a lot of people knew Maple and liked him, and I had never interacted with him personally. Again, this is only my second season in this org, and I am blessed to be able to host this for you guys and get more involved. So, you know, it's a shame not to be able to meet somebody like Maple, who a lot of people knew. He'd been here a while. You know, but everybody has their own reasons for leaving. You know, some people might have seen in general chats, I did the same thing with United Rogue, and I had disagreements. I had been a captain for season upon season in that, and I just had disagreements with management. Now, was that a little immature to leave in the middle of the season? Probably. I do take responsibility for that. But, you know, everybody, the point of these community leagues is if you're having fun, be in it. If you're not, then why? So in maybe Maple's case, he was having issues. He just didn't like the way it was run. He wasn't having fun. He wanted some time to himself. And I do think that you can't hold that against players. Like, you know, if something comes up, or if they're just not having fun, then you need to, you know, step back. And so I don't think it's fair to be too harsh to him. You know, should he have left in that manner? Who knows? At least he had, you know, obviously 2 fantastic people to take over for him. So, you know, there is that. He didn't leave you just high and dry. But I do think maybe in the future there needs to be, you know, some modicum of moderation when you're pulling out. But that's not the only GM epidemic we have. So then, okay, so correct me if I'm wrong again. I want to make sure I get this right. So you had Fort disappear, Clamps take over, and then did somebody take over for Clamps, or is it Clamps now?
How it worked. Mitch was the GM of the Kings. He left to go. He wanted to play in a different org on a different team with somebody. I believe it was the Eagles, yeah. So he couldn't be GM of the Kings, obviously. So he's like, all right, I don't want to be your GM anymore. Then Fort took over. I don't know the total reason why Fort stopped GMing after 3 days, but he did. And now we have Clamps. So
Clamps was a free agent pickup from Fort. So Clamps went from free agent to GM within like 3 days.
I mean, yeah, and it's similar to the Lions. There's just like randomly 3 GMs in the span of like a week. It's like, it's really, we're at a really strange time here with GMs, especially when season just went into, well, just into the regular season now. We just started it, and we've had like 6 different GM changes.
It makes sense that it was Clamps that took over, though, realistically. Not, like, yes, he's new to the org, but he's not new to being a GM. He had been GM in Indy for a bit, so it makes sense that they trusted him with taking over. And I'm going to bet, like, if you took a look at those rosters, I don't know them that well, but he would have been the one most experienced and most, like, able or willing to take it over. So it does make some sense from a logistics perspective.
Yeah, you don't want to go through a newbie GM training. You know, I think that took like a week for when I became GM the first time with my indie team, where we had to go through meetings. Then we had the Draftee Circuit where we had to be GM for that. And, you know, bringing on someone brand new, like Fort even, he was brand new GM. I don't think he GM'd any other teams before. So he was probably just clueless. He was just thrown in there and didn't really know what to do or what he was supposed to do. So, you know, it was tough for him in that situation. I feel for him wanting to leave.
Yeah, but you have Clamps taking over, so, or You had all that happen. So I mean, like, again, left in good hands, at least. And this is what I like about our RLPC is you have the system in place that if this kind of stuff happens where people just start, leaving, dropping, whatever, you have somebody right there to take over for them, and they get on that real quick. So it's not just like that team is left entirely in the lurch, like trying to figure out, do we play, when do we play, who do we talk to, what's happening, etc. You just don't drop into work. So I do, again, props to the RLPC management team for getting that underway. And then there was also one more, I believe. Am I mistaken, or am I correct in that, of a GM issue? And I believe this has to do with you, Squintle. So you want to give us the gas here?
There's no issue. It wasn't any problem.